And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Well, taking a look at this Friday's sea ice analysis, the temperature's below zero up here now, quite an increase in the heavier ice here, especially north of St. Lawrence Island and now from the east side, again right on into Norton Sound, increasing ice here along the southwest coast, all the way into northern Kuskokwim Bay, but south of there, hardly anything at all, especially in northeastern Bristol Bay, a little bit here, but really not much at all to see. And from there, going to tonight's weather, next system bringing gale force winds and rain into Adak and Atka tonight. Colder and fair with light winds over the eastern Bering Sea as a high pressure here centered along the northwest coast ridges southward to the Alaska Peninsula. So snow showers will gradually taper off on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula with possible clearing. Fair Kodiak Island. Areas of snow continue here for the eastern interior, north of the Alaska Range, all the way up to the eastern Arctic coast, where that winter weather advisory is out until 9 p.m. tonight. And a trough here along the southeast coast, as well as the North Gulf Coast, keeps it kind of damp and showery. And for tomorrow, it should be dry, hopefully, here in the central panhandle with a better chance of some precipitation down to the south, associated with this low west of the Queen Charlotte Islands. And still some moisture up along the North Gulf Coast for possible showers there, especially from Elfin Cove, Yakutat area in toward Prince William Sound. And maybe some light snow showers in the western Copper River Basin. Areas of light snow over the eastern interior up to the eastern Arctic coast. And then cold high pressure and over the north slope for temperatures well below zero up in that area. And mostly clear, cold all the way down into Cook Inlet and southwest interior, dry for the Alaska Peninsula as this front slowly moving now, new low there forming that and moving northward, and that kind of slows the whole eastward progression down. But some rain should spread into the eastern Aleutians by tomorrow afternoon, but the stronger winds will be back up here to the north and northwest of that system. And then for Sunday, that stronger low pulls northward here across the eastern Aleutians, bringing gale force winds here into the Alaska Peninsula. Big increase in the winds for the Pribilof Islands with increasing chances of snow there. And mixed rain and snow changing to just plain rain here with the warmer southerly winds there for the Alaska Peninsula and rain and snow showers for the western Aleutians. The interior, pretty quiet day, mostly clear, cold temperatures. Starting to see an increase in the winds here, even along the Alaska Range, mostly the higher elevations, but nothing too significant. And dry all the way down here into the North Gulf Coast area. Chance of rain or snow showers there, Kamishak Bay, maybe the southern Kenai Peninsula, and some shower chances or light rain increases for Kodiak Island late in the day. And mostly clear, windier, Lynn Canal here, higher pressure building over the Yukon there. So those north winds starting to pick up quite a bit, northeasterlies here for the northern panhandle, drying it out and clearing it out and cooling it off somewhat with still some clouds down toward the south though, but dry across the entire area. And for the coastal water forecast, we're looking at north winds at 10 knots, pretty light there for Prince of Wales Island, central coast southeast 10 to 15, and east to southeast winds 20 to 25 knots for the north coast. Lynn Canal, light southeast breeze at 10, northeast at 10 for Stevens Passage, north winds 10 knots for Clarence Strait. Then on Sunday, you'll see the winds here, small craft advisories, Lynn Canals, those north winds increase to 25 knots, gusting 40 knots. Northeast 20 knots for Stevens Passage, Clarence Strait southeast at 15. And along the south coast, winds will be north at 15 knots with seas 8 to 9 feet. And then the north coast here, looking at east to northeast winds 15 to 20 knots and southeast to northeast at 20 knots for the central coast. Prince William Sound tomorrow, north at 10, and eastern North Gulf Coast, north to northeast, 15 to 25 knots, northwest, 25 knots, Barren Islands, Kamishak Bay, Cook Inlet, north to northeast winds, 15 to 20 knots with 3 to 5 foot seas. And then for Cook Inlet on Sunday, northeast winds, 15 to 25 knots with those 25 knot winds right on down through Kamishak Bay, east at 25 for the Barren Islands and the North Gulf Coast, east-northeast winds at 20 knots and northeast winds at 15 knots with 3 foot seas for Prince William Sound. Kodiak Island, northwest winds 15 to 20 knots tomorrow for Saturday, and variable winds 15 to 20 knots here for the Alaska Peninsula, northeast to 20 for Bristol Bay. And then on Sunday, gale warnings here for the Alaska Peninsula, east to southeast winds 35 to 40 knots, 30-knot winds out of the east for Bristol Bay, and east-northeast winds 25 knots for Kodiak Island. Eastern Aleutians tomorrow, gale warnings, southeast winds 35 to 40 knots. Good gales here for Adak and Atka, southerlies at 40 to 45 knots. And west to southwest winds 30 to 35 knots there for the Western Aleutians. And for the day on Sunday here, the Western Aleutians, west-southwest winds 20 to 30 knots, 15 to 20 knots out of the southwest for Adak and Atka. Eastern Aleutians here, strongest winds there. Looks like Unalaska Island, northeast at 30 to 35 knots, otherwise toward Nikolsky, west winds at 15 knots. And for the southwest coast tomorrow, looking at northeast winds at 20 to 25 knots, east 25-knot winds for St. Lawrence Island, and about 20 knots for Norton Sound. East 30 knots for the Pribilofs, and full gales here for the St. Matthew Island area, east at 40 knots with 13-foot seas. Minimum gales for St. Matthew Island on Sunday, east at 35 knots, east 30 knots for the Pribilofs, seas up to 16 feet. And gale warnings for the Kuskokwim Delta coast, east winds 35 knots, small craft advisories for Norton Sound, Yukon Delta coast, St. Lawrence Island, east winds 25 to 30 knots. Up along the western Arctic coast, or on the eastern Arctic coast, eastern Beaufort Sea coast, west winds 15 to 20 knots, southwest at 10 on the central coast, southwest 15 there for the western coast, and east to northeast winds 10 to 15 knots for the Chukchi Sea. Then for the day on Sunday, increase in the winds here for the Chukchi Sea, east to northeast at 15 to 30 knots, northeast at 20 knots for the western Arctic coast. Pretty light winds there for the central coast, and southwest breeze at just 10 knots for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast.